In today's video, Noah and I are going to talk about the difference between investors who are converting, like regularly doing deals in their business, versus those who are struggling to even get a deal or two done. Let's dive right in. So if you're not familiar, I run a mastermind group called CCF. We've got roughly like 175, 200 different companies around the country represented in that number. And anytime we do an in-person event like we did this previous weekend, we'll break the groups up into converting, meaning like they're popping off some deals, they're getting paid, and non-converting, meaning like they're struggling a little bit. So there's some things that we've kind of consistently identified between folks that are doing really well and folks that are kind of struggling a little bit. And I think it's important to note that even us, every successful real estate investor I know, was in kind of this like struggling to convert spot where they weren't really doing a ton of deals, they weren't making a ton of money. And I would say the difference between like washing out of real estate and being like, oh, this doesn't work, it's too competitive, so-and-so's course sucked, whatever, right? Versus like finding financial freedom and accomplishing the goals that you want to accomplish, whether it's rental properties, fix and flips, or wholesale deals, comes down to like getting these few things dialed in. Noah, what were a couple of like your takeaways from this weekend?
Yeah, I would say one of the first easy things to combat and do this successfully is going to be, I noticed in a lot of the people who are not converting, they weren't checking their CRM daily. They weren't getting in there looking at the nitty-gritty of what's going on. And then because they weren't looking at things every day, they weren't getting to leads right away. And a big thing for our industry is speed to lead. If you're not getting to it fast, your competitor is. Yep. So that's a simple fix of, even if it's an hour, 2 hours a day, if you're working your normal job and then have time to check your CRM, you need to make sure that you are looking at it every day, making sure you're up to date on everything going on in it.
Well, I think as investors, there's like I have my marketing going out, like this is sexy, this is fun. Then there's like the other flip side of like, I bought another property, or I bought a rental, I bought a flip, but nobody likes to talk about all of the work that goes on there in the middle of like, the lead comes in and sounds like a tire kicker, oh yeah, you mailed me, what's your offer, right? And I think a lot of investors will, if they're not getting to those leads quickly, they'll even just look at it and like prejudge it and listen to the recording and be like, that guy sounded not nice, so I'm not going to call that one back. We did an interview just a few videos back with a guy named David Perret, whose last name I'm probably totally butchering, that bought like a hotel, like 40 apartment units from one guy. But the guy's initial conversation with him was, yeah, you probably don't have enough money to buy what I've got. And I know a lot of you guys watching this, and even a lot of the guys I work with would have like, you don't know who I am, right? Like, I have more money than you. They would have totally gone ego. Right. David, on the other hand, was just like, you're right, I might not have enough money, but let's chat about it and find out, right? So being in your CRM consistently, getting to leads quickly, especially if you're doing any like pay-per-click advertising, SEO, Facebook ads, anything that's along that. Like if you're doing pay-per-click ads and somebody goes through and fills out the form on your site, chances are they're gonna do a couple. Like those are the leads that you wanna get to like almost instantly.
As fast as you can.
It comes in and you realistically want them on the phone. We have our setup through Call Porter where it triggers like a webhook, calls into the staff, reads the staff at our answering service, the info from that lead, and then triggers an outbound call where we've got that person on the phone in a matter of like 60 seconds, 45 seconds, instead of, well, that one came in 4 hours ago,
We'll get to it.
Let me see if they're still ready. What else have you seen?
Another big one that I've seen is there's a lack of, so in our system, we're able to use tasks, utilize tasks heavily.
We use Resimply.
Yeah. And a big thing I'm seeing is there's not a lot of tasks. There's no good notes on, okay, so sure, lead came in, I called it. You didn't leave a note that you called it, so you don't know if you called it. And there's no new task to be like, all right, let me try him again in the evening after I called. So basically,
trying to remember a lot of things.
You can use your CRM to help you organize everything. And if you don't do that, when you start getting all these new leads coming in, all these different stories and notes going on, you're going to be inundated with information and not remember it all. So you got to use it to your advantage.
It's easy to forget if somebody said, hey, I'm out of town, call me next Wednesday at 5 p.m. If you don't write that down,
you're not going to call them
you're
at 5
probably
p.m.
not going to call that person on Wednesday at 5 p.m. And most real estate investors that I've met, that I've worked with, like even buddies of mine, I mean, even me, like seriously, are just not super like detail-oriented people.
Right.
Like my staff know if there's a call I'm supposed to be on, they should remind me like 10 minutes beforehand. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to be there. So, not using the CRM. I know one we had in our business early on that I'll tie into that is not using drip campaigns.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll link to a tutorial I did on how to set up drip campaigns in Resimply. But effectively what that is like with one click, being able to send out emails or text messages based off of like a predetermined schedule. So we'll use this for if somebody, for instance, like, oh, I'm out of town, hit me back in a week or something. And we'll trigger a sequence to follow up with them. If somebody calls in or fills out a form on our site and then we've called several times, we've left voicemails, we can't get them on the phone, instead of us continuing to try to remember to keep up with this person, because there's a lot of probably people in that category, we can click one button and have it work that lead for a year or two. Mm-hmm. And we all the time have leads come back or reply to one of those like, hey, I'm ready to sell now. So go check out that video if you haven't. But if you're an investor actively marketing, drip sequences should like easily make you an extra 6 figures a year. Easily. I mean, we literally just get like free lay down deals that are like, yeah, I'm ready to go now. And they, pretend like they haven't ignored you for 9 months but before they reply to that and say, hey, I'm ready to go. I was raised where like, no didn't mean ask again. It meant like, yeah, absolutely not. And I think a lot of investors struggle with that when they're marketing to property owners with like giving up too quick, right. Or they're looking for like, we call it like the lay down lead of like, oh yeah, I'm ready to go. I'll sell you my house, for 50 cents on the dollar and you can have the Corvette that's in the garage. Like, you're going to miss out on 90% of your deals if you're not pushing on your leads. So if you make somebody an offer and they tell you no, well, don't counter yourself and be like, well, I think I could pay more. If anybody said that to me this weekend and I just made fun of you, I'm sorry. But instead hit them back with, well, what did you have in mind, or what's your counter, right? You shouldn't be running up price by yourself. And even then, you shouldn't be going from like your initial offer to as high as you can go on that initial conversation, because then you have no reason to call that person back. I mean, with us, we're typically starting like 10 to 15 grand below where we really want to be. And we'll come up like a couple grand. The sellers will come down 5, 10, 15.
Right.
We'll come up a couple grand. They'll come down more. And if we get to the point that like we're almost at our max, we'll be like, hey, tell you what, we'll pay closing costs too. So we're not even throwing that out in our initial offer of, oh, we'll pay closing costs and everything. We're strictly just talking about the number. That way, we can, over the course of time, hey, I chatted with my contractor. We were able to like remove some things from the scope of work. We were able to get the cost of repairs down a little bit. So if I could come up an extra, $3,000, would you sign today? And a lot of the guys that I was talking to, even that I've worked with over the years, it's kind of like, well, yeah, they told me no, that they would never sell for that price, that I should be ashamed of making an offer that low, and I just said okay and hung up. Or, I told them I was here, they said no, so I gave them my best, and they still said no. Right. So it's, we've seen a lot of that going on, and I think also on the offer end of making it all about the money when that's not the only thing that's going on.
Right. I think that's a big thing to tie into that. When you go into it and it's all the money-driven side, you don't know their story of what's going on. Because 9 times out of 10,
rapport.
Right, 9 times out of 10, I mean, there's a reason they called us. We're here to provide a solution, and buying real estate is our means of providing that solution for whatever they have going on. So digging into what's going on. Why do they need to sell the house? Yeah. What's happening there? Because that's another big negotiation tool that the people who were not converting, they were sticking to a number side. Instead of going more rapport based, you're able to figure out how you're going to help them. And then, yes, you're incorporating the price, but you're really providing a solution to a bigger problem.
I think it's also painting the picture, right? people will sell a property for less than they want to sell it with, or join a coaching program or whatever. If you can accelerate the gap between getting them from where they're at to where they ultimately want to end up.
Right.
So, we had that guy who wanted to move to Mexico that you were working, that we ended up buying his house. And it was like, we were talking numbers, and he was kind of just like, yeah, I don't know, it might be fine. And finally you were like, look, I could have you in Mexico like this time next week. And the guy was like, all right, let's do it.
Okay.
We didn't have to pay more to get him there, but it was just reminding him of ultimately what he wanted and painting the picture of how we were able to get them kind of from A to B.
Right.
Any other like key things you've noticed just over the past couple of years we've done this?
I would say, I'd say the biggest key, we've touched on it, but just follow up in general, whether it be you calling back when you have a task, you using drip sequences, reaching out via text message, anything like that, any sort of follow up is going to be the biggest key that I've found in the past few years working with numerous folks. Has the biggest benefits, whether it be any of those systems, or even if you are working out pen and paper and a notebook, if you say you're going to call somebody back, you got to call them back.
I think one of the key, just to summarize all of this, is a lot of people see the wins that I share that other people throw up of, sent this much mail, got this deal, made this much money. And those often don't show the whole picture of, well, there was 3, 4, 5, 6 months worth of follow-up to get that one deal out of that one campaign. I'll use the metric all the time. I'm typically spending anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 to get an off-market deal, and that's me, the guys I've worked with, and that holds true pretty much nationwide. But what a lot of people don't realize is the deal somebody's getting right now might have been from a campaign they did 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. So, I always tell folks, if you're on the fence in this industry and you want to just try it, you're probably better off finding some other side hustle or something, because, if you drop a mail drop and then expect to get paid in 30 days, sometimes it works out that way, but sometimes it takes 60, 90, 120 days for that particular lead or deal to pan out, and you will have shut off your CRM, closed your tracking numbers, and stopped working the leads by the time that one that was going to sell to you would end up panning out.
So in closing, a few of the things we pointed out, we have use your task system.
Yep.
Make sure you're working your leads.
Yep.
Use follow-up drip campaigns.
Set them up and then actually use them.
Well, yeah.
A lot of people will go through and build them out, but then they never actually trigger them.
Or make sure that they're working properly. They trigger them and then they fire off and air out.
Also, don't use drip text messages to a landline. They ain't gonna get your texts.
Be consistent with everything. When you know you're supposed to do it, do it.
Yep. Get your follow-up done, make your offers, use your tax system, trigger your drips, and you'll go really far. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video and hang out with Noah and I. I always love when we get to hang out, because it's my boy. If you guys have any questions for us, feel free to drop them down below and we're happy to answer them for you. It's really what we're on YouTube for. I'm not your guy who's gonna just post content and then not reply to you. So if you have questions, if we missed something, or if you don't understand something, just drop us a note below. We'll be sure to get to it. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with us. Be sure to like and subscribe if you found it helpful. Talk to y'all next time.